My name is Hilary Edwards, registered dietitian at Allegiance Health. I'm an inpatient dietitian and I see all of our patients at the Open Heart Center.
And I'm Marie Galdes, a registered dietitian also at Allegiance Health, where I work in the outpatient setting in cardiac rehab. I see patients on an outpatient basis. A lot of people wonder when they meet us how to shop, how to cook when they have to eat heart healthy. We want to take the guesswork out of that today for you. So come and join us. We are going to start with the grocery store. We're going to go mostly in the outer perimeter of the store where typically the healthier foods are. And at the very beginning you'll find the deli section. This is the place where you'll find all the high-fat, high-sodium lunch meats. There are some brands that might show lower sodium.
So you can ask them behind the counter or also look for a nutritional information guide. And in here you can find the sodium content of the different deli meats.
And I should caution that low sodium, lower sodium doesn't always mean very low sodium. So again, you just want to cut down on how much lunch meat you use.
When you're shopping, you want to avoid too many condiments. Some condiments that are high in sodium are mustard. A low-fat choice would be less than 2 grams of fat per serving. So if you pick up a real mayonnaise, 10 grams of fat per serving, 1 tablespoon, compared to a light mayonnaise, 3.5 grams of fat per serving, 1 tablespoon.
Salad dressing is another place where you might get a lot of sodium and a lot of fat per serving. We recommend that you stick more with the vinaigrette type dressings. They're typically lower in sodium, lower in fat, and you can tell the difference on the label. You know, we recommend eating a lot of salads, but you want to cut down on the dressing and eat more of the salad.
We should eat a more plant-based diet. So find what fruits and vegetables you have in your fridge and plan your meals around those foods. You want to choose what's in season. Like for the winter time, your citrus fruits are going to be more in season, so it'll be cheaper for you to buy those. You also want to choose a variety of colors. So choose the darker, deeper colors rather than the lighter. For example, your greens here, this is going to be a better choice, higher in nutrients, rather than just your iceberg lettuce. So if you were to compare and hold the two together, this would definitely be darker. You're going to get more nutrients from the darker green. Broccoli is going to be a darker vegetable, but again, choose a variety. This is a green one. Choose carrots for your orange, peppers, red, yellow, eggplant. Try something different. Add variety into your diet so that you're getting plenty of the vitamins and minerals that your body needs.
Fruits and vegetables are very low in sodium, and so this is why the bulk of your diet should be fruits and vegetables. Also very high in nutrients. A lot of the store, especially the middle part of the store, is going to be really high in sodium. And typically a good sodium intake for anybody is anywhere from 1,500 milligrams a day to 2,300 milligrams a day. So if you're getting a lot of your food from this section, you're getting very little bit of sodium.
The other thing I wanted to point out in the produce section was some protein alternatives, some meat alternatives that come from soy. So they're going to be low in fat and low in cholesterol.
We're going to want to bypass this section where all the processed meats are because, again, they're very high in sodium, very high. They're also high in fat, and typically a typical man on 2,000 calories needs only about 65 grams of fat a day, and of that, less than 15 grams of saturated fat. You'll find a lot of saturated fat in this section. A lower sodium, often, and a good choice, is to use the frozen section and to find things like frozen chicken. This is a very economical, typically, and a time-saving kind of food to eat. However, again, you need to still watch the amount of sodium. You know, meat is not a bad thing necessarily on a heart-healthy diet. The key is in choosing a leaner type of meat, and typically, if you can see a lot of fat on something marbled into it, that's higher in fat. Compare the chuck steak with the round steak. You know, a good serving size is the size of a deck of cards or the palm of your hand when it comes to meat. So first of all, this is one of these steaks is way too big. But secondly, there's no marbling of fat in there. That means there's less saturated fat. A good serving would have about 2 to 3 grams of saturated fat per serving, as opposed to something more fatty having closer to 5 to 7 grams of saturated fat. A lot of people consider turkey a great choice when it comes to hamburger replacement. I just want to caution you, because ground turkey is not all the same. There's some ground turkey that this one here has 85% fat-free, and it has 6 grams of saturated fat per serving. If I'm trying to stay under 15 grams a day of saturated fat, that's pretty high. Look for the lean ground turkey, the 99% fat-free, and this has half a gram of saturated fat per serving.
So eggs are another protein source in our diet. They aren't as bad as they have been said to have been for us. We caution you, just stick to 3 to 4 yolks a week to keep your cholesterol down. Some other alternatives to eggs are egg substitutes. You can get the ones, they're mostly made with egg whites. And there's even the alternative of just egg whites you can buy in the carton. So in the dairy section we have sour cream, cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is a higher sodium choice, so you're not going to get away from that. Just limit the portion size to 1/4 of a cup if you're really trying to keep your sodium low. You've got a variety of fat contents in your milk. The whole milk you want to stay away from. So it's going to be higher in calories, higher in fat, total fat, as well as saturated fat. A skim milk or fat-free milk, you have 0 grams of saturated fat. Another milk alternative is the soy products. Try and choose one that without any added sugar, because sugar is going to raise your blood sugars. So if you have diabetes, or if you're trying to keep your triglycerides down, you want to avoid extra added sugar in your diet. So you want to just choose a light yogurt or a low-fat yogurt. They're going to be lower in calories, lower in fat, and there's also, of course, the soy alternative as well. Cheese is an area where a lot of my patients get in trouble. They say they love cheese, they put cheese on everything. So cheese is a food that's going to be high in sodium, high in fat, high in cholesterol. So stick with the natural cheese, not the processed cheese. But choose, the white cheeses tend to be lower in fat. Yeah, these are reduced fat options for both, for a Colby Monterey Jack and a Sharp Cheddar. These only have 3.5 grams of saturated fat in comparison to a regular whole fat cheese has 5 grams of saturated fat. And then there's the fat-free option, which has no fat, no saturated fat. However, you want to be careful on the sodium. It does not mean it's just a free food that you can have as much as you want of it because it has no fat. It does contain 280 milligrams of sodium in just 1/4 of a cup. So you can get into trouble. When you're reading a label, I like to encourage my patients a lower sodium choice, less than 300 milligrams per serving. What margarine do I choose? And you can see why that's a big question. There's a lot to choose from. So stay away from the stick margarine. The stick margarine is full of trans fats. So the word, if it says 0 trans fats, it may not necessarily be trans fat free. This margarine in the tub has partially hydrogenated soybean oil. That means trans fats, even though it says right here trans fats 0. However, this margarine does not say any partially hydrogenated oils. It has a natural oil blend, flaxseed, canola oil, and it also says no trans fats. So read the ingredients on all your margarines. Also in margarines, you'll find something called plant sterols and plant stanols. They're adding these to a lot of foods, but specifically margarines. They help to lower cholesterol by 10% if you're eating 2 servings a day. So this margarine happens to contain some of these. It says on the label, plant sterols. As far as spray margarines go, they're a great choice. Very little calories, if any, no fat.
Remember, we're trying to stay under 15 grams of saturated fat a day, and this is where we can really blow it. A regular serving of ice cream. Let's look at that serving size. Serving size, half a cup. Now, I don't know about you, but most people I know don't eat a half a cup of ice cream. Yet, for a half of a cup of ice cream, of regular ice cream, 7 grams of saturated fat. There's some that say slow churned, double churned. Typically, they're lower in saturated fat. 1.5 grams of saturated fat for a half cup serving makes a big difference. I can have a lot of ice cream. It's recommended that most people get about 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day, and we're pretty sorely lacking in that, usually in our culture, because we don't eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and we don't know how to buy whole grain bread. So let me show you. The thing that you want to look at is how much fiber, first of all, per serving. A good slice of bread will give you about 2 to 3 grams of fiber per serving. This bread is giving me only 1 gram of fiber per serving. And the reason being, if I looked at the ingredients label, and all of the ingredients on foods that are packaged are listed in the order that of their weight. So the most important ingredient, the one that is predominantly in the food product, is going to be first. And my first ingredient here is wheat flour. Wheat flour is just basically white flour. Let me compare that with another kind of bread, 100% whole wheat bread. If I were to look on the label, I would see that this has 2 grams of fiber, much better choice. And if I looked at the ingredients, I would see that the first ingredient is whole grain wheat flour. Those are the key words. You want to find whole grain when you're looking at the list of ingredients.
Flaxseed is another grain that we can add into our diet that we're finding is helping to lower cholesterol, triglycerides. It's very high in soluble fiber. You can find it in the baking aisle at the grocery store, or you can also find it next to the grains, which is where we're at today.
We are headed into the aisle of salt and sugar. This is best an aisle to skip.
With the spice section, remember we're trying to cut down the salt shaker. Take the salt shaker off of your table, but you can replace it with other salt-free seasonings. And there's a wide variety to choose from. Also, be careful. You want to use garlic on your food. This one's a garlic powder. This one's a garlic salt. You want to choose a heart-healthy oil. You'll find these in the baking section as well. So stick with the olive oil or the canola oil. The spray for your pans, it is a great choice. This is the crackers and cookies aisle. Like we said, it's in the middle of the store, so you really don't need this aisle at all. However, if you do want to get a cracker or a cookie, read the label.
The frozen section is a great place to get seafood. There's no deli counter that has fresh seafood, it's a great place to get salmon and cod. Seafood is a very good source of protein. It's lean. Even the fattier fish, like salmon, has its redeeming qualities. Salmon is high in omega-3 fats, which is very heart healthy. And we highly recommend 2 servings a week. And again, a serving size is the size of a deck of cards. That's going to give you your omega-3s for the whole week if you get 2 servings. When you look for fish, especially salmon, you're looking for wild-caught fish. You want to avoid the farm-raised fish, which tends to be higher in toxins. A great economical way to get vegetables is to buy frozen. Typically, vegetables are low in sodium. Some manufacturers add a little bit of salt to their peas and lima beans, but still a great place to get lots of your fiber and your vitamins and minerals. Another place to get dietary fiber is in the cereal section. And so you want to avoid a lot of cereals that have a lot of sugar in them. Most of these are made with white flour. We're looking for cereals that have about 4 to 5 grams of fiber per serving. and this one has 5 grams of fiber per serving. That's a good amount when it comes to a breakfast cereal. The best cereal that I recommend, and that I'm sure Hilary recommends too, is good old oats.
A good snack is nuts or popcorn. Popcorn, again, can be high in sodium and fat. So, again, look for the trans fats. If it says partially hydrogenated, choose a different brand. Nuts is also another way to get omega-3s. Walnuts contain omega-3s. Again, watch your salt. You can find heart-healthy mixes that are low in salt. Canned goods. This is where we run into a lot of trouble with sodium. So you really have to read the label. For example, a can of soup. This has 890 milligrams of sodium for the whole container. So this one says healthy request, that it has 50% less sodium, so it has less sodium, but it still may not be low enough. So this one has 410 milligrams for half of the container. And this one is a low sodium soup for sodium restricted diets. This one only has 140 milligrams, and the serving size is the whole container. So sometimes your favorite fruit's not in season, and so it's a little bit more expensive. Dried fruits or canned fruits is another way to get in a serving of fruit. Remember, a serving of fruit is a small to medium fresh piece of fruit or a half a cup of canned fruit or cut up fruit. Everybody loves pasta, so we would recommend choosing a whole grain pasta. So choose one where the first ingredient, like Marie also discussed with the breads and cereals, where the first ingredient is whole wheat. This one says 100% Durham whole wheat flour. That is the only ingredients in this pasta. Beans is another great protein source, high in fiber, and a quick way to add beans into your diet is to get the canned. However, we've discussed that it needs to be low sodium. So try and find a bean that is no salt added, fat-free. This one only contains 10 milligrams of sodium for half of the container. Or cook your own beans from dry, and then you're not adding any salt. Peanut butter is another great way to get protein, and who doesn't love a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? So choose a natural peanut butter. You're going to get less saturated fat, and also might help you avoid the hydrogenated oils.
White rice or brown rice. Brown rice obviously is going to give you more fiber. White rice, still not a bad way to go, especially if you're watching sodium. Some people say, hey, I don't like to cook rice because it takes forever to cook. Well, it could, especially brown rice. Usually takes about 45 minutes to cook. There are options, and actually you would think these are high in sodium. Typically boxed foods are higher in sodium. However, this has no sodium at all. Just to reiterate, we just want to say that the amount of sodium that you need a day, probably about 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams is what's recommended. And usually when you're looking at a label, that means less than 300 milligrams per serving. And if you're choosing at the outer perimeter of the store, more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, you're going to cut down on the amount of sodium you're getting.
And then when you're looking at saturated fat, 2 to 3 grams saturated fat per serving. That will help you stay under the 15 grams saturated fat for the day.
You're looking at fiber too. When you look at a store and you're looking at breads and grains and cereals, you want to look at the amount of fiber. Most people need about 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day.
And remember, avoid trans fats. Just because the label says 0 trans fats, read the ingredients label. If it says partially hydrogenated oils, that means it has trans fats, and put it back on the shelf.
Thank you so much for shopping with us today. We're so glad to be able to read food labels with you and show you what nutrients dietitians look for to keep a heart-healthy diet. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact the registered dietitians at Allegiance Health. Thank you.